for Midlego Entertainment for waking us up this morning. Midlego Entertainment. My name is Puleng Sekgalo, and I am the Chief Albert Luthuli Research Chair. I'm going to be your program director this morning. And not alone, I'm here with my colleagues, Ms. Pearl Mbolekwa, who is going to be assisted by Ms. Trifosa Ntswilengwe. So we are going to be driving this ship for you today, this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for joining. I would like to start by acknowledging our Executive Dean in the College of Human Sciences, Professor Zethu Inkosi. I would like to acknowledge Tuli family here today, and also all of you distinguished guests. My dean will come and welcome properly. So I would also just like to acknowledge all of you. Once again, thank and to reflect and to be provoked, hopefully, to imagine what hearing for justice, for healing. Today's colloquium cannot be reduced to a merely procedural or forensic exercise. It compels us, ladies and gentlemen, as scholars, as practitioners, as activists, and as citizens to interrogate the conditions under which historical truth is produced and the consequences for a nation's moral account when its official records are subsequently shown to have obscured rather than disclosed. This colloquium, therefore, constitutes an invitation to revisit our collective memory and to engage critically with questions of justice, of accountability, and the institutional generation of historical knowledge. Inkosi Luthuli, as we know, was a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, a moral authority within the liberation struggle. And he was a figure whose legacy is inextricably bound to this university's institutional identity through the research chair that bears his name, the Chief Albert Luthuli Research Chair. The fact that the circumstances of his death have been officially misrecorded or have been officially misrecorded close to 6 decades warrants serves as a reports and bureaucratic instruments are never ideologically neutral. They are sites at which power is exercised and at which power may, under determinate conditions, conceal its own violence. So when we speak about state violence, institutional violence, this is what we are referring to. And therefore, today's deliberations will occasion such an examination. We hope to together reread the archive against its grain, to scrutinize the ethics of dual loyalty among medical and forensic practitioners positioned between the state and the citizen. What does it mean to take an oath as a medical practitioner, but then write a report that is falsified? And then it takes us 6 decades for us to get to the truth. So it also offers us to really think about the unfinished mandate of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. These are not narrowly disciplinary preoccupations, ladies and gentlemen. They occupy the intersection of historiography, of psychology, when we think about the traumas that we're still carrying as a people, as families, as citizens, about jurisprudence, our legal systems, medical ethics, and heritage studies when we think about our archives. We cannot afford, therefore, the presumption that transitional justice constitutes a closed historical chapter. With an estimate 300 to 400 apartheid-era cases still awaiting resolution, this colloquium is neither purely commemorative nor retrospective. It is timeless, we believe, necessary, but also urgent. Accordingly, the colloquium is not oriented solely towards the reconsideration of a single historical event. It poses more expansive questions regarding the kind of society we are constituted and aspire to become as a democratic community. It interrogates whether our democratic institutions are fulfilling their foundational promises. And lastly, it invites critical reflection on the unfinished work of reconciliation. And perhaps most importantly, it underscores that the pursuit of truth is not a terminus, but an enduring democratic obligation. And therefore, it is my challenge to all the speakers today to take us on this journey. But it's not only the speakers, ladies and gentlemen, you are all here so that we can collectively reflect on this. And so I hope that as the speakers present here, it will be an invitation and you will see it as a provocation so that when we open up for engagements and discussions, you also share your own views and own reflections as well. And so I shall pause here and invite our Executive Dean, Professor Inkosi, to officially welcome us before we get into the business of the day. Let us please welcome Professor Inkosi.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sanbonan, Dumelang, Abshen, Dimachironi. Goeiemôre, dames en heren. Yes, colleagues, it's my pleasure and gratitude to welcome you all to this event. We've got our program director, Prof. Bulen Sekhalo, who is a chair of Chief Albert Luthuli, and our sign language interpreter, Ms. Pearl Mbolekwa, and Ms. Trifosa and Swelengwe, and would love to thank the Luthuli family for allowing us to engage in this matter. I think our ambassador will join us, Mr. Salih Omar Abdu, who is ambassador from the state of Eritrea, and he's a dean of diplomatic corps. And then we've got our own acting vice principal for research, graduate studies and innovation, Professor Mpongwepe. And we've got Advocate Charlie Naidu, who is a chairperson of Luthuli Museum, and other representatives from the Luthuli Museum. We have Mr. Brian Xaba, who is the director of Luthuli Museum, Dr. Sibusiso Ntsele, our forensic pathologist and medical legal consultant, and Dr. Sandisiwe Lerato Kobe, who is a senior lecturer in the Department of Christian Spirituality, Church History, and Missiology here at UNISA, Mr. Imtiaz Ahmed Kaji, who is a nephew of Ahmed Timur, and the representatives from the national and provincial government present this morning, SAPS colleagues who participated in this case, representative from the business community, foundations, the institute and religious community present here today, representatives from other institutions of higher learning, representatives from the National Prosecution Authority present, Ms. Lesigo Linda Prank, who's going to give us a poem in between the sessions, and also the Madleko Meropa Entertainment. We highly appreciate your music and support for the event. Representatives from the university community, union, alumni, and students present, members of the media from various media houses present here today, our esteemed guests, distinguished members of the audience, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all. It's both an honor and privilege to welcome you to the University of South Africa for this important colloquium on the reopened inquest into the death of Chief Inkosi Luthuli, uMadlandona, and the unfinished work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. On behalf of the College of Human Sciences, I extend our sincere appreciation to participants who have traveled from across the country to participate in what promises to be a deeply meaningful and intellectual, consequential dialogue. I wish to begin by acknowledging the partnership between the College of Human Sciences and the Luthuli Museum, and by recording our appreciation to Professor Buleng Sekgalo and the research program that she leads for scholarly initiative that has brought us to this gathering. And one can ask why this matters in the College of Human Sciences and to the college itself. As the College of Human Sciences, we believe that the conservations we will have today are what the university needs, and it's crucial and public functions the university is institutionally obligated to lead. The human sciences are frequently mischaracterized as disciplines merely descriptive of social life. For example, their constitutive task is to render society intelligible to itself. The humanists, they interrogate the structural conditions under which injustice arises, the mechanism through which power becomes institutionalized, the processes by which identities are constituted, the conditions of memories, preservations, and erasure, and the pathways through which post-traumatic societies seek reconciliation. The College of Human Sciences exists, in essence, to examine the systems, institutions, and signifying practices through which human societies organize memory, justice, and belonging. For those of us in the College of Human Sciences, this is familiar terrain. Historians ask whose stories have been excluded. Sociologists examine how power becomes institutionalized. Political scientists explore the relationship between the state and its citizens. Legal scholars interrogate justice and constitutional accountability. Psychologists consider the intergenerational effects of trauma. Ethicists ask what responsibilities individuals and institutions carry when confronted with injustice. Memory, but each of these perspectives, in one way or another, is about the same underlying questions this colloquium poses. How do societies live honestly with their past, and what do they care? What do they owe those who were harmed by the lies told about them? Chief Albert Luthuli's legacy continues to exert influence, not only within South Africa, but across the global community. His leadership was grounded in personal integrity, moral courage, intellectual humility, and an unwavering commitment to the pursuit of justice through non-violent means. These virtues retain their analytical and normative salient today. As we confront the contemporary challenges of structural inequality, social fragmentation, the erosion of institutional trust, and the persistence of unresolved historical injustice, we are reminded that democratic life cannot flourish absent a sustained commitment to truth, accountability, and ethical leadership. As the college, we reaffirm our commitment to research in the service of the public good. We reaffirm our commitment to partnerships that strengthen public engaged scholarship. And we reaffirm our commitment to creating institutional platforms at which difficult questions may be examined with intellectual rigor, mutual respect, and a shared regard for the common interest. It is our hope that today's deliberations will deepen our scholarly understanding of the Luthuli inquest, while also catalyzing new collaborative research, informing public discourse, and contributing to the policy formulations in the domain of transitional justice. I accordingly welcome the participants of this colloquium, not merely as guests at an academic event, but as fellow interlocutors in a broader democratic project that's of recovering historical integrity and of honoring those such as Chief Albert Luthuli, whose truth have been too long deferred. I trust that today's proceedings will be methodologically rigorous, unsettling where the evidence requires it, and ultimately generative, producing insights, partnerships, and we hope that tangible outcomes that extend beyond these institutional walls will be delivered. On behalf of the College of Human Sciences, I wish you a productive and substantive colloquium. It now gives me a great pleasure to declare this colloquium formally open. You are all welcome. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Inkosi. Indeed, now we feel welcomed. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all here in this room today, but others are joining us online. Others are joining us online, and others are also just missing out. But we would like for you to also share with them what it is that they're missing out. So please, we would like to invite you to please use the following hashtags so that you can, when you hear beautiful nuggets that you feel everybody else must hear, then you can share on your social media platforms. These are the hashtags that you can use: at UNISA 150 and beyond, at Albert Luthuli Colloquium, at Truth and Reconciliation. And don't worry, if you don't have the internet, we got you covered. Yes, you can just go and find, yes, you can just go and find UNISA event, and the password to use is UNISA with a capital U, UNISA at 2022 at. So please go ahead and share all the beautiful nuggets as the day continues. And ladies and gentlemen, we are now about to start, and our first speaker for the day is going to be Professor Mpongwepe. One of the things that we spoke about, colleagues, is the politics around archives. All along, for almost 6 decades, we have been reading about the death as being suicide. When we go to the archives, when we go to the knowledge that exists, this is what we have been taught, what we have been hearing, what we have been reading. And now we know otherwise. And so today we ask, what does it mean for the archives or for the reimagining of the archives? And how do we rewrite the archives? And to assist us to engage and grapple with this issue, we have Professor Mpongwepe, who is the Vice Principal, the Acting Vice Principal for Research, Postgraduate Studies, Innovation, and Commercialization here at UNISA. And now I would like to invite Prof. Mwepe to come and offer us his reflections. Let's please welcome him with a round of applause.
Thank you, Madam Program Director, for the opportunity to be part of this colloquium hosted by the Chief Albert Luthuli Research Chair. And good morning, members of the Luthuli family, distinguished guests, colleagues and cousins, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Program Director, in one of a Nollywood movie, in the beginning, the introductory scene shows a dog. And 30 years later, the dog is still the same. This is true as per the assertion of historical simulation and forensic records to overturn the 1967 apartheid era narrative sounding the death of the ANC president and Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Chief Albert Luthuli. I am therefore, ladies and gentlemen, approaching the topic from archival perspective, looking at deconstruction. To quote John Caputo's core argument on archive fever is that the living past cannot rise up from the dead and speak to us like dead stone. Caputo uses his framework of hermeneutics to explore how human memory, trauma, and historical function when structural evidence is lost. Madam Program Director, this, the French philosopher Jacques Derrida, in his text Archive Fever, sees similarity between psychoanalysis and archives, between the human mind and the archives, and what he calls recapitulation, where recapitulation seems impossible, when nothing any longer can reunite itself right in close to the head, to the principle, to the arc, or to the archives. The topic relates to the challenge of understanding and reconstructing the past through the archive. The notion of recapitulation cannot be neatly pieced together into a coherent narrative without confronting the dislocations and disruptions it entails. The structure of the archive is spectral, nascent, the Freudian signature. Psychoanalysis leads to memories, the story that helps us to recording, and is not included, the absence. The word archive has its root to control, to authorize. The reader, the desire between psychoanalysis and archives are in the desire to recover moments of inception, the beginning, an origin in which a diluted way we think it might be some kind of truth. Nothing starts in the archives, nothing ever. Archives has meaning in both commencements and commandments, both a place an original position, a beginning, a source, and a command, an authority, an order of human mind, of a supervisor, of a superior. Archives is a site of the great chain, the contract between the living and the dead, the locus of power and authority, inclusion and exclusion, the relation between the secret and non-secret, the private and the public. Sigmund Freud asked us, why do we remember? Madam Program Director, psychoanalysis should revolutionize through it. What has been hidden, what has been chosen, what has not been authorized. We mark things we wish to be forgotten to remember trauma, past pain. The archives is a negotiation between our own marks, what we wish to mark, record, reorganize, and the marks and the absence of the marks of those long gone, those who will never do justice to. Archives are never faithful to reality, or nor totally representative of it, but they play this reality, offering differences and alternatives to other possible statements of the perception. And to psychoanalysis, the archives is to engage and explore through old thoughts, long forgotten, to bring them to surface, and to the dead justice to find the return of the repressed. Ladies and gentlemen, let me not flit with a Derrida too long and turn to the overturned big lie. Bana ba bomma ba re le ge o ka e buela lopeng mao ko bua go bona. Ba re mo apara chipa wa inyaoela. Le ge o ka ithinta lerole monkgo le suta di ta kwala gole tša ba tša lotwa ke dimpša. I don't know what it means. But the equivalent, some cases like chickens come home to roost. The big lie concept, in which Adolf Hitler wrote in his 1924 book, Mein Kampf, about how people are more likely to believe a massive falsehood than a small one because they would not fathom something having the infamy to distort the truth so extensively. And his minister of propaganda, Goebbels' actual principles, while the precise phrase repeat a lie 1,000 times is an attribution or paraphrase rather than a verified direct quote, it actually reflects Goebbels' documented strategy on mass manipulation and psychological control. Psychologists refer to this human tendency as the illusory truth effect, which proves that hearing a statement multiple times makes the brain process it more easily, leading people to believe it is true regardless of the facts. While repetition does not change objective reality, it fundamentally alters human perception and belief. Hence, apartheid government made us believe or know that Chief Albert Luthuli died in an accident. Madam Program Director, there is an official position of reconstructing archives. My position for reconstructing archives, which is not official. Officially, correcting official archives is done by erasing or overwriting original records. Archivists add supplementary documentation, explanatory notes, or formal addendums to maintain the absolute integrity of the primary historical material. Restoring truth and memory is to fix gaps left by either war, natural disaster, finding marginalized voices, supporting justice, and stopping lies. You remember Benjamin Gates, played by Nicolas Cage in the movie National Treasure of 2004. All his life, he was searching for a treasure in order to change history, the history of his great-grandfather. So the principle of archival correction, the official principle, the first is that there is no erasure. Original records are never physically altered, deleted, or destroyed to fix an error. Then there's addendum and errata. formal explanatory notes, verified corrections, or supplementary context, files are linked or filed alongside the original record. And audit trails, taking log records who request the change, the verified evidence supporting the correction, and the date the explanatory note was added. And the correction process, like in the case of Chief Albert Luthuli, it started with the inquest. And a formal request to verify factual proof of the error must, in the official record, it should be submitted to the National Archives and Record Service of South Africa, which has got a statutory regulatory role of managing records and memory of the Republic. And then there will be an archival review, cross-referencing. And in the public domain, some will start rewriting biographies or the print for that biographies so that they are rectifying the record. This is a straightforward but bureaucratic and exclusionary. Let me digress a bit and then offer my opinion. Since 1994, more often than not, some new kind of a commission of inquiry is established to respond to some major crises faced by government. The commissions are often at Sharpeville location. Between the blows and repeated beaten him with Shambok. After a severe beating, police discovered that he knew nothing about the case. And as the last parting gesture, Sergeant DeBrain took an empty brandy bottle he bought and broke it across the back of his neck. He was then thrown bruised and bleeding out of the main entrance of the police station. And he was stumbled away through the dark and deserted early morning in the street as he was released. Few months later, on Monday, 21 March, Hellboy, last seen dropped by the police after interrogation, made a disastrous appearance at the police station with his fellow petty criminals after a weekend of drinking spree on Sunday. At the police station, he was near the fence at the west gate where he recognized Sergeant Brain, among other white policemen. At the far seat and pulled out a small caliber pistol. A scuffle ensued as his friend tried to stop him from shooting. He, however, discharged 2 bullets harmlessly in the air, thereby precipitating the police firing in response. Literature, without mentioning or referring to the action of Geelboy, states that the local detachments of white police panicked and fired into the crowd. Interestingly, after reading Frankel's book, the leading South African journalist, Patrick Lawrence, believed that the account of Geelboy and his action provided a convincing explanation for what had always been unexplained, why police opened fire to the protesters. My own inquiry with Dr. Mwaketsi on the death of Geelboy Mofokeng, we went to the police archives in Pretoria, which provided conclusive evidence that account of his action is a fallacy. He is not on the police list of the deceased people. He, however, appears on the list of the people who were admitted in the Paraguanath Hospital for gunshot and wounds. But he is there in the cemetery. His name is there in the cemetery, although his grave is not there. During the proceedings of the commission, without mentioning him by name, Lieutenant Colonel Binar in his evidence stated that Geelboy was the cause of the killing of Sharpeville residents. However, in his evidence during the vessel commission setting, Geelboy mentioned that, remember he's dead, but in the commission he mentioned that he was a 24-year male staying in Sharpeville, 19 Machobani Street, employed by Vereniging Consolidated Milling at the time of the Sharpeville uprising. He arrived in Sharpeville 2 years before the massacre from top location in Vereniging. And on that day, he came to the police station to listen to the message and address to the Sharpeville residents from high government official regarding the past laws. He also mentioned that he lost his cap during the march, and when he tried to pick it up, that is when the police fired shots. Geelboy Mofokeng, who participated in the demonstration and was reported dead during the shooting, only to testify months later at the vessel commission, which was set to investigate the shooting, as reflected in the archives of the commission. Like I said, the story is compounded by the burial site, where his name is on the list of the people who are commemorated. His story is one of those which require further investigation, just like the story of Chief Albert Luthuli. To write a novel in Northern Sotho with him as the main character. The conclusion and the final sentence will be, Geelboy Mofokeng, isale a eya, ga o tsebe o re ile go tloa Sharpeville a leba kae. Bao ba mmonela mafelelo ba mmone a fula dithatswa le ditšhwene dithabeng tša magaga mataba. As one archival diva indicates, public archives in South Africa are at crossroads. In such a situation, archivists are deliberating whether to take a narrow or a wide road. I didn't hear amen. And not knowing which leads to destruction or redemption. Apartheid grossly distorted the acquisition of and access to record. And archives were part of the broader system which negated the experience of Black South Africans. For example, if you go to the Western Cape Provincial Archives, on the photographs of South African soldiers who fought in the First and Second World War, white soldiers are identified by the names in the metadata. But while African soldiers are only identified as unidentified. When we legislation, courts, records, yet most revealed histories and histories exist elsewhere in memory. That is my subject. In lived experience and in the observation of ordinary people who stood at the intersection of power and everyday life. Oftentimes, we don't even speak of the cultural workers. Their story told through memory and exhibition. The archives tell us what apartheid did. It is often less capable of telling us what apartheid felt like. This is where oral history becomes invaluable to function as a counter archives, not because it replaces historical records, but because it augments them on a lived knowledge. They reveal dimension of experience that formal documentation cannot fully capture. Oral history is not simply a recording, but shapes the event. The work of deconstructing the dominant authority of building archival praxis rooted in the African realities and tradition remains to be done. The gap the memory of Chief Albert Luthuli can be corrected through oral history. Documenting of history is almost a challenge. And with many people consider the truth only to be recorded form, while forgetting that the other way of indirectly accessing the past is through oral history. And as I am asked to conclude, countless studies of the transition from oral narratives to recorded stories illustrate how, once recorded, the stories become static and frozen because they are faithfully copied or replicated rather than evolving with each new telling. And on the other hand, the fluidity of orality makes it a liquid communication. I'm not going to talk about liquid communication. With oral history, the advantage is that even after the story has been narrated, with others at leisure, thereby creating many copies through non-identical, as though people can further narrate the stories, but in a slightly different way. However, even written records can result in two non-identical original records. For example, think of the two non-identical copies of the Freedom Charter by about 3,000 delegates, but was broken up by police on the second day. Although it has two copies, but the copies are not identical. But we may not know that. I wanted to also speak about the Steve Biko's autopsy. I'm not going to. Written record does not have the same impact as those with a first-hand experience of what happened. Hence, the court system in South Africa rely more on oral testimony than records. And I am saying oral memory will last forever because it is always green. And every time it is transmitted, it grows anew as the griot can add or remove some information. It has always worked and is assumed to be proven to have adapted, as it does not have complicated mechanics like records, particularly digital records. The human voice, with all its intonation, inflection, and emotion, can convey so much more than written page. Books teach us about the past. Oral history gives it a voice. With oral history, we can always ask why the story is told. Who is telling the story? Where
a moment for you to reflect, to comment, or to even ask questions to Professor Mwebe. Open over to you, colleagues. I think there are roving mics here to us. There's already a question there, Sissy. Thank you. Okay. I see 2 questions. Maybe we can take 3 questions. Note later on, we're still going to invite our speakers back again, and we're going to have a more open engagement and discussion. So if you don't get the opportunity to ask your question or make your comment now, please don't worry. There's going to be an opportunity later. Please go ahead, Emma.
Okay, thanks, Prof. Thanks, Prof. Wepe, for that amazing presentation. I was hoping that you would also touch on the aspects of commemoration and how it has also helped to distort the narratives, the historical narratives. Because commemoration sometimes, you could say, over-sensationalize voices that are predominant instead of the truth. So what do you have to say about the aspects of commemoration and how it has failed to articulate the truth in respect to what happened in the past?
Thank you so much. There's another question here. Sise Ubaba there. Is there a third question or comment? Oh, yes. We'll take these 3 and then give Prof the opportunity
I
to
just want
respond.
to take this opportunity, thank you, to thank Prof for the presentation he's made. And I quite appreciate the oral narratives that, I mean, I was at the museum, Luthuli Museum, and Usisi just narrated the life and story of Inkosi Luthuli. My question to you, Prof, is we found that for over 6 decades, as you said, that there was information given, say that information. Now, my question is, we have the new reality, know what actually happens. Why still keep the old record? Why still keep the old archives? I would have, I'm not archivist. I would rather discard old, keep the new with updated action.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What I heard is the new will be added as an addendum or an addition at the end to say, oh, oops, here's an additional information, the truth.
Prof, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. So this is not archival violence. Who gets and what gets? Then can we trust the entire archival ecosystem post 1994 in South Africa based on this?
Thank you for the questions. There are a lot. Let me start with the one that, when you get old, you forget. Let me start with the one that has just been asked. From an archival perspective, where I'm standing out, always say that a record before it's created, most of the time is transmitted orally. Let me give you an example of the minutes. When we record the minutes, we start by talking and deciding. And thereafter, we are going to the minutes. And we are not going to capture everything that is in there, that we discussed. But if we were using the oral, so again, another example that you will be able to decide whether that is a complete story. In organizations, if South Africa, read that annual report. Every annual report is an official record that is going to end in the archive. Again, go and check the reality of those municipalities. Slavery is not there. There is in one report is something that is good in the country, but the real is saying something. And when records are transferred into the archives, there's no way of knowing the reality, but we rely on those records as the reality and be looking at the lens only. We should also looking at it from the African lens, so that the whole ecosystem is complete. Hence, we are struggling to even solve our problems. We are struggling to solve issues because we always looking from one lens, but there are other lenses. So rectify that. Unfortunately, the archival principles that are in the legislation and also rectifying, we cannot remove the older story. We just have to say that this is what they say. And then this is the reality, because you cannot erase history like that. You just say, this is what they say, and this is what is reality. Even if these archives are kept separately, but within same institution, there's cross-reference that this is what they say, but this is reality. The story becomes complete because they had their story, but there's this counter story. And then the archives can also counter that other story. I think it addresses both the issue of the wrong information, the traces, because if we say that we might in future be faced with a similar situation because we removed the history that is important, even if that history is misinformation, but it was the reality that people, or it was indoctrinated into people's mind and people know. So it's something history teaches us that we can be able to rectify it in the future. That is the importance of history. But if we remove everything just like that, in the future, we are going to experience the same thing, and then what we call reinventing the wheel. Then I'm going to the aspect of commemoration. Commemoration will distort if you rely only on one single source of truth. But if you triangulate the truth and then you allow everyone, back to oral history again. With oral history, I'm just going to give you a perfect example of paying lobola. You know, when we pay lobola in African tradition, You will never go alone. Why? Because you need witnesses. And as you need witness, you need your uncle and your maternal uncle and your paternal aunt. And then there is a messenger in between who is going to be the interlocutor. You've got the aunt and the uncle and then the interlocutor. So those people already, they authenticate the record in an African tradition. But if you go alone, you are going to eat the money and say that, no, they gave me this much. And then when you come to convey the message and you say, no, they took this much. So that principle is also adopted by the blockchain technology. Blockchain technology, it has a chain in every transaction that is made. It adopted a traditional way of archiving into the technology so that you leave a trail in the blockchain so that you authenticate that record. Let me pause there.
Let's thank Professor Ngwebe as he goes back to his seat. Thank you so much, Prof. Ladies and gentlemen, when you entered this morning, you would have seen that we have an exhibition there at the back, printed, but we also have electronic as well. And it's there for your enjoyment, but it's also important so that you understand what the exhibition is about and the background of the exhibition that is being launched. And to assist us with that for a few minutes, I'm going to ask Ms. Loyiso Xulu, who is the curator at the Luthuli Museum, to come and speak briefly about the exhibition and to invite you during our comfort break and also later on during lunch. Let's please welcome Ms. Xulu.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Prof. Khalo, and a very good morning to all our guests, our host, Professor Inkosi, Luthuli family, Chairperson of the museum, and our panelists. I greet you all. It is indeed a privilege for me to be standing here today as we all reflect on the 2025 judgment that was passed during for the inquest of Chief Albert Luthuli death. We are not only reminded today of the persistence and the resilience of those who believed in justice, but we are also here today to reflect and discuss on the legal decisions and how those impact us going forward. However significant they are, they do not only mark the end of a journey, rather they often mark the beginning of a new phase and the work that needs to be carried out after that. The 2025 judgment has opened important possibilities for truth-telling, accountability, and historical redress. But it has also presented us with an enormous responsibility to revisit, reassess, reconstruct, even fill in histories and narratives that have too often been fragmented, overlooked, or deliberately obscured. I'm particularly interested in the oral history tradition that has been discussed earlier on. So how do we do this? As a starting point for institutions such as the Luthuli Museum, exhibitions become one of our languages in how we speak. Hence the exhibition at the back here today. The exhibition that we have titled The Journey to Uncover the Truth, I believe is somehow self-explanatory. But in it being self-explanatory, it has a lot that still needs to be unpacked. So how do we put together a message or a story of over 60 years that has good? such a body of work, the history of and legacy of Chief Albert Luthuli. The court records, the testimonies, the archival documents, photographs, newspapers, family all play an integral part how we retell the story. These are often preserved in collections, archives, and the stories are carried quietly across generations. The challenge before us then is no longer, but the challenge is how we carefully gather the vast body of knowledge into a coherent or maybe even a meaningful narrative that allows us to see the fuller picture. The task demands patience, collaboration, and it requires archivists, historians, researchers, community members, educators, and institutions to work together in a way that transcends disciplinary boundaries. It requires an approach it requires us to approach the historical record with humility, understanding, and the fragment that contributes to the larger truth. So in this regard, platforms such as this colloquium, conferences, publications, and even the exhibition that we have form a pivotal role in us creating this. So if we are being honest with ourselves, these are only mechanisms or mechanisms that we are only using to tell the story in a very young. Sorry, these are it is, if we are being honest with ourselves, these platforms represent only the tip of the iceberg in what we need, in the work that we still need to carry out. So with those few words, as Prof has already invited everyone to, during your lunch break, to please engage with the exhibition, as we have tried to tell 60 years of a history into a few panels for your enjoyment and also for your education. Subjects such as history within their school curriculum. So with those few words, so plan to, because prepared a little video clip that puts together some of the work and the efforts that the museum and the National Prosecuting Authority have gone through in order to reach such a judgment, and for us to have such a record today. This also will enhance the exhibition in terms of having young learners or young people in the community who also don't even know what a courtroom looks like, for them to be exposed to such processes and how it's dealt with when we talk about court proceedings and rulings that are made in courts. So with that, if you'd please allow me to play a 6-minute clip for our guests today. Yes.
To lead.
Yes, I need to make a ruling in terms of section 17, capital letter A, which is as follows: that the inquest into the death of Chief Albert Luthuli, held on the 19th of September 1967, is hereby reopened, and the state, the prosecution is allowed to lead further evidence. So for the record, Advocate Siyabonga Ngobo is now going to lead the evidence of the first witness that is lined up for today. Yes, call the first witness to the
I
stand.
call Khodi Samang Frank Hamanya.
Ungungulu kanjabo eshokwenkanyamba ebuye lotishia wabulawayo kwamsinyikazi uliciko kwesomculo inkokheli yasemakholweni umholi kwesenkolo nesombusazwe wayeyindoda enesibindi elikhoe lezimalizo ayengumholi obonelelayo isizwe somkhamisa utulapho
Let the spirits of Luthuli speak to all. Let the legacy of Luthuli move on.
Happily, I am but one among millions who have dedicated their lives to the service of mankind, who have given in time, Protea, that all men shall live in peace. May the day come soon when the people of the world will rouse themselves and together effectively stamp out any threat to peace in whatever quarter of the world it may be found.
Ungungulu kanjabo eshokwenkanyamba ebuye lotishia wabulawayo kwamsinyikazi uliciko kwesomculo inkokheli yasemakholweni umholi kwesenkolo nesombusazwe abomajanuna izizwe zonke ziphakamisa wakho uliqhawe lamaqhawe siyabonga izizwe zonke ziphakamisa wakho abomajanuna.
Having considered all the evidence, including expert evidence, which was very valuable to this court, and I must say that the evidence presented by experts before this court corroborates what Mbemu Nyando saw. He's not here to testify, but what he relayed to the Nyando family is corroborated by all the experts that testified before this court. I therefore give the following order. 1, point A, the finding and the ruling of the magistrate, Mr. C.I. Boswell, dated 19 September 1967, at the Stenger Magistrates Court under inquest number 76 of 1967 is set aside.
Thank you very much. I saw a lot of people bobbing their heads while the music was playing. Uh, the soundtrack was made by a group of youth that one of a group of youth that the museum had in one of their museum programs as part of a way of also including youth activities at the museum and also just reaching them at a pace and at a level where the youth is today. So thank you very much.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, after being transported back to October 2025 when the ruling was made, I would now like to invite someone who was in that courtroom, Dr. Asbusi Sonsele, who is a forensic pathologist, a highly regarded forensic pathologist and medical legal consultant. He is recognized for his leadership, academic contributions, and international expertise in forensic medicine. In private practice, he leads the forensic medical legal consultancy, offering impartial expert opinions, case reviews, and medical legal guidance of to courts, law enforcement,